God, I just love that opening sequence. I could watch it all day. But anyway, as you probably guessed from the title of today's video, today we're going to be looking at the use of lighting in the films of Ridley Scott. Let's start by getting his own thoughts on the matter.
And whether I'm going through an industrial area or a obviously beautiful area, I'm always fascinated by what I boil down to really the performance of light on objects. And even industrial is beautiful.
But what exactly does he mean by that? Well, today we're going to find out by looking at 5 of his preferred lighting techniques. Firstly, he likes to layer up textures and different types of reflective material. He argues that lighting should contribute to the film in a way that's noticeable, not subtle.
I walk around and I see life, not through rose-tinted spectacles, but I obviously see it in a certain way, which I try and emulate into the films, and therefore I will see a certain kind of light, mood change, whatever. If I'm driving along in a car, that will go in, will be remembered, and it will come out in the film to be used at a certain given moment because it evoked something in me. So that's a kind of orchestration of emotions through light.
Let's look at an example from Blade Runner. We have different sources of light in the shot, the reflections of Zora's translucent jacket, from the glass, and from the rain itself. The slow motion also helps to emphasise the changes in light, and the dramatic breaking of glass creates even more layers of reflection from shards at different angles. Another example of this is his use of broken pieces of mirror and water to refract light, as in Blade Runner, which he also uses elsewhere, such as in Someone to Watch Over Me. To get that level of reflection, he actually shot that scene on a boat over a covered pool. He also often chooses monochromatic surfaces with lots of details to emphasise the variations in lighting and shadows. Compare this to the minimalistic style of Denis Villeneuve's work. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, he's a great director, and these shots are clear and easy to understand, but they're also perhaps a little boring. With Ridley Scott work, you feel almost overwhelmed with visual information, for better or worse. Secondly, Ridley has a fascination with narrow light sources and the dramatic shadows that they can create. He often does this through narrow windows. These are usually short and long, but can be narrow and tall, as long as they create unique and unusual shadow formations. Ridley perhaps even alludes to this fascination of his with light with one of his characters in Black Hawk Down. Another way he creates narrow strips of light is by using high-power xenon lights throughout Blade Runner. The effect is a constant bombardment of ads into the domestic space, which feels like a prison searchlight or invasion of privacy. You'll notice that these harsh dramatic shadows often occur at a particularly important moment in the character's journey, emphasising that change in circumstance through its heightened style. Thirdly, colour. Among other things, Scott was one of the founders of the neo-noir genre. Here we can see neon lights creating some interesting tones across his dystopian cityscapes, creating a world that seems somehow both garish and beautiful. However, the general colour tone of the film is blue and cold, emphasising Deckard's sense of isolation and stoic demeanour. Notice though what happens when Roy confronts his maker. The warmer tones from candlelight come through, suggesting anger, passion, perhaps even foreshadowing the red blood, especially in the final cut where he viscerally gouges his creator's eyes out. This isn't just used in Blade Runner though. We see blue used frequently to suggest a calm, safe base, as in Black Hawk Down, which is later contrasted with a warm yellow light, which becomes an unnatural, sickly green as they fight into the late hours. Compare that to the cold, gritty tones of the battlefield in Gladiator at the beginning, or the yellow, glorious splendour of the arena, or even the warm, red tones around the dangerous Commodus, ruled by his passion. Colour can also be used to characterise. Colour saturation is another way to convey visual information, such as the desaturated world of Elysium. Fourthly, light intensity as an indicator of the protagonist's emotional state. I don't just mean colour, as in Blade Runner, or dramatic edge lights used throughout his work, but even the overall levels of darkness in a shot often reflect the character's darkest or lowest point. Compare that to his use of sunset in Thelma and Louise. The actresses involved noted
every day we would be on the set for hours wondering why we weren't going home, and then you see Ridley with his camera crew racing as the sun is going down over this hill to get, one last traveling shot of something, and my fear was that the whole thing was going to be a voiceover, all these fabulous traveling shots.
I think I've got a little piece up here which retains certain things. Like, I'm hopeless with any form of retention of languages, but I have a block. But on a visual side, I walk around, I see life. If film is an art form, then certainly lighting is definitely an art form. At a certain layer of movie making, then there's the other layer and the other layer of movie making, right? So yes, lighting to me should contribute and should be a statement. I hate it when people say you shouldn't notice incidental, the score. I mean, it's bullshit. You should notice the score, and the score, if it's doing its job, will lift and elevate the movie. Lighting also.
While he might not be the only person to do this, it shows how important getting the right lighting is to an auteur who often prides himself on his ability to stick within budget. Another little painstaking detail was the creating of a feline or animalistic reflection in the eyes of his replicants, which subtly suggests they aren't human. Fifthly and finally, environmental conditions. Scott has, at times, noted a debt of gratitude to Akira Kurosawa. Especially in his early work, he uses rain and smoke to add layers of visual interest that help create and maintain a certain atmosphere. To establish this mood, he often has to slow down the pace and relies heavily on a great score. Fortunately, he's frequently collaborated with great artists like Hans Zimmer or Vangelis, but the result can sometimes create films with lots of beautiful scenes that slow down the story beats too much. He's also known to occasionally give up control of the cut, and later releases of Blade Runner and Legend have been much more well received critically. Although, perhaps no amount of artistry can overcome a bad script or structure or silly, childish movie premise. Here's where perhaps the great Scott falters. Some to Watch Over Me and Black Rain are both wonderful films that I could and plan to talk about at length in the future videos, but the inclusion of completely unnecessary scenes that don't move the plot forward affected their pacing and wider commercial appeal. He has a tendency also to become overly attached to these well-lit shots and finds it difficult to kill his darlings. Nevertheless, he's created some of the most visually stunning films ever made, particularly in the sci-fi genre. In conclusion, Scott is a master of lighting variation and techniques. He has a particular fascination with the near complementary colours yellow and blue. However, as we'll see in the next episode, he gradually moves away from the slow, dramatically lit pressure cooker films of his early career towards more character-based films with more emphasis on dialogue, etc. When that episode's ready, you'll be able to watch it by clicking the link. It'll be just here or here. Anyway, take care, guys. See you next time. Cheers.